What is the Federal Reserve's plan and what does that mean for the US housing market? Now, the Federal Reserve, of course, states that their plan is maximum employment and 2% inflation over time, although I'm not sure that's exactly what they're going for this time around. Of course, the Federal Reserve has their Fed funds rate set at around 5.25%, which is restricting the economy, slowing things down, which is what they say they're trying to do. And I agree with that. But what they're really trying to do is they're trying to raise the neutral rate of the economy. Now, the neutral rate is where the Fed funds rate is not restricting the economy and not supporting the economy. So at this rate, it's not stimulating and it's not restricting. So back before the pandemic, the Fed's funds rate had sat around 0% for a long time, basically since the great financial crisis in 2008. And this can be an issue for the Federal Reserve because when we have a recession in the United States, the Fed likes to drop their Fed funds rate to help stimulate the economy, encourage lending, and encourage spending throughout the overall market. So the fact that the Federal Reserve, their Fed funds rate sat at zero for so long means that if a recession had hit in 2015, let's say, when the Fed funds rate was zero, they wouldn't be able to drop their rate any lower to help stimulate the economy. So what they're trying to do now is they're trying to restrict the economy. They're trying to slow the economy enough so that they can slowly lower their Fed funds rate and have it sit at maybe 3% or 4%. And then that way, when a recession hits, they can drop their Fed funds rate and use that to help stimulate the economy. But what does that mean for housing? We're going to get into that into this video. But before we do, my name is Liam O'Reilly. I'm a realtor here in Vermont with Jerry Riley Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs, whether in Vermont or anywhere else across the country, reach out to me directly. All my contact information is in the description. I'd be happy to help you. So let's get into the video here. First, we're going to talk about inflation and the role that shelter plays in the CPI numbers. So you may have seen this week's CPI, the headline number is 3.3% year over year. It was unchanged from April to May, which is a good thing. But a big part of the CPI is shelter, is rent and owner's equivalent rent. So 36% of this number is made up by shelter, which has remained high. We can see it's at 5.4% during this most recent year over year reading, which is above the average for everything, but it's the largest factor into the Federal Reserve's inflation number. And the reason why I say their goal is not to get inflation down to 2% is because that shelter makes up such a large portion of the CPI number. So if they really wanted to bring inflation down, they would do things and set their policy in a way that stimulated housing, right? And that would be dropping interest rates. Right now, people can't afford to buy because interest rates are high, which forces more people into the renter pool, driving up rents across the country. Builders can't bring as much inventory to the market. One, because there's less buyers out there, so there's less certainty that what they build will be sold because of interest rates being high, and two, because it's more expensive to build. So even if you're building rental properties, the interest that you're paying when you borrow money, when builders borrow money to build these rental properties is more expensive. And so it's more difficult to bring inventory to the market, which would help the rental side of inflation, and which is, of course, the largest factor of inflation, and bring CPI down. And we can see that I'm not the only one saying that the struggles in the housing market are causing rents to skyrocket. We have this article here in Yahoo Finance where they have this interview in the video up above, which you can watch after you watch this video if you'd like. But here in this interview, this is from the transcript. We have limited inventory in the housing market, high mortgage rates, also high home prices. So that's keeping a lot of people in the rental market longer. So that means there's really strong demand for rents, right? There's less people are buying homes, so there's a stronger demand for rents. Okay. So now that we have that all out of the way, what the Federal Reserve is trying to do is they're trying to slow the economy as opposed to just bring inflation back down to 2%. If they wanted to bring inflation back down to 2%, they would drop interest rates, which would drop the rental inflation number that they track so closely and is such a big factor in their CPI, but they're not doing that. So what are they really trying to do if getting inflation down is not their true goal? They're trying to raise that neutral rate. And so what does that mean for housing moving into the future, right? People think that rates are going to drop, and some people think that rates are going to drop quickly. Now, the Federal Reserve has said that their plan is to slowly drop the Fed funds rate over time as they see the economy slowing and as they see inflation starting to come down. And then eventually they hope to stabilize the Fed funds rate. They said at the end of 2025, I believe they said their Fed funds rate projection is to be at 4.1% or something like that. So about 1.5% lower than where we are now. Right now, we're between 5.25 and 5.5% on the Fed funds rate. And so they want to be at around 4%. Maybe they'll end up being a little bit lower than that if they accomplish their goal. But what that means for housing is interest rates aren't going to drop significantly if the Fed achieves this goal, right? They're not going to completely go from, they're sitting at around 6.5%, at least that's the best rate you can get here in Vermont, according to New England Federal Credit Union's website. They're not going to go from 6.5% down to 3% like they were during the pandemic. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to slowly tick that interest rate down, which will gradually make things more affordable in the housing market. But when we take a look at where we're at in the US housing market, we're at a really interesting time. This is the Redfin article, their weekly market update. I don't pay too much attention to the title. What I look at are these charts down below. And so in last week's video, when I covered their weekly market update, we noticed that median sales price is at an all-time high, and we can see this is on an upward trajectory. Things are trending upwards with the median sales price. This isn't necessarily from this month. It takes about 30 to 60 days to close on real estate across the country. So this is from May. These are homes that went under contract in April and May as opposed to June. But still, 4.4 median sales price. Things are strong on the sales price side, but some other numbers are starting to slow down. We have home buyer house payments at an all-time high, not a surprise with high interest rates. But pending sales here down 3.5%. So less homes are going under contract. We have new listings up 8%. More new homes are hitting the market. And because of that, inventory is up 16.7% year over year. So inventory is starting to build. Now, at the same time, we do still have median sales price starting to rise here. That being said, if interest rates start to drop slightly and start to come down, start to lower, I think that's going to cause the median sales price to stabilize as opposed to drop or completely skyrocket, right? Because if interest rates were to drop drastically in the current economy that we have right now, there's a ton of buyers on the sidelines who would jump into the housing market because all of a sudden they can afford to buy a home. Again, that might actually be good for rental inflation in the sense that less people would be renting, but at the same time, it would drive up the cost of homes. If mortgage rates start ticking down slowly over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, then what I think we're going to see is home prices remain stable over those next 3 years. And this is roughly what Zillow estimates will happen this year. If we take a look at Zillow's projections here of home values, what Zillow thinks is going to happen is that they're going to drop by about 1% year over year for the median sales price, from 360,000 down to 356,000. So basically unchanged, but relatively flat, right? And if we go back to Redfin and take a look at the data here, so of course their median sales price is a little bit different. I find that all these sites have slightly different median sales prices, and I'm not exactly sure how they calculate that or why it varies so much from site to site. But regardless here, what we're seeing with Redfin, so Zillow is expecting home prices to drop slightly, but as we have active inventory starting to build across the United States, we'll have more listings for people who can now afford to jump into the housing market as the rates start to drop slowly over the next few years. So it's not going to be a flood of people jumping into the housing market, but if rates slowly come down, right, maybe they're at 5.75 by the end of 2024, and then next year they're at 5%. We're going to have more and more people slowly starting to come into the housing market, which should, instead of just taking all the inventory out of the market all at once, would hopefully stabilize the inventory and cause median sales prices to remain stable during that time frame as well. That's at least what I think is the most likely case if the Federal Reserve is able to achieve their goal. Now, if they're not able to achieve their goal and they need to drop rates quicker because they slowed the economy too much and now we're in a recession, then, I think depending on how severe the recession is, we could see home prices skyrocket, right? If it's a severe recession and not many people can afford to buy homes, then we won't see home prices shoot up. But if the recession is bad in some ways, but there's still a lot of people out there who can afford to purchase properties at these lower interest rates, then we could see home prices go up even more. So Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave me a comment. I love learning from you folks. I learn a lot from you in the comment section. So leave me a comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.